Well, all right, Brian. We had the big Press Row podcast Sports Game of the Year episode last week. A lot of people have reached out to me. A lot of people have commented on it. A lot of positive, some controversy.
I'd like to hear about that. Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Well, the number one controversy as far as volume was the debate whether Rocket League should be part of the conversation, right? Is it a sports game, right? I mean, many people had it as a no-brainer, sports game of the year.
Yeah.
Other people are like, there's no way that should be, factored in. It's not, it's not in the same league as a Madden or a FIFA or an NBA or an MLB. I'm, as somebody who didn't include it in my top three was Madden at number 3, NBA 2K at number 2, and number 1 was MLB The Show. And of course, the overall winner was NBA 2K16. I didn't not include it. Does that make sense? It was not excluded. How about that? From my personal list, not because of any, is it a sports game or isn't a sports game? It just wasn't I played as much as or enjoyed as much as the 3 games that were in my list. Of course, it was in your list, and you are, one of the biggest fans of it. So what are your thoughts as to the controversy, as it were, about whether Rocket League should even be part of that conversation for Sports Game of the Year?
Well, it's not a traditional sports game, obviously. It's not a replication of an existing sport necessarily. I mean, it takes the base of soccer and just flips it on its head with cars and 3, anywhere from 1 to 4 on the pitch at a given time. And then they've even done stuff like now you have a hockey mode. So, I mean, it's hard for me to say that's not a sports game when you have it is soccer. There are 2 goals at the end. You've got a ball. And it is hockey. There's a puck. There's 2 goals at the end. You can play as a goalie. You can move out. You can use these same strategies and same tactics that you find in sports within the game. It requires cooperation between teammates when you have multiple people in there. It requires passing the ball. You get assists. You score goals. I mean, it's a sports game. But I understand, and it's partially why when I was debating my number 1 sports game for the year that I went with NBA 2K over it is not because Rocket League isn't a sports game. It's because Rocket League has this freedom that simulation sports games don't have. NBA 2K has to precisely replicate what happens within a realistic framework. You can't have guys scoring 150 points, going 20 for 20 from 3-point range. You can't have guys dunking from the 3-point line. I mean, it's not an arcade game. You can't do wacky stuff with it. You can't be as creative as someone like a Rocket League where they have no parameters they have to stick within. They have no league license dictating content to them. So Rocket League, they can do whatever they want with that, and they can create a game that is really fun based on the rules they set, based on the physics they create, based on the arena it's in, based on how the cars move, how fast they are, how they maneuver, how they fly, how they climb walls. I mean, they have the ability to twist things any way they want, and they've done that with free updates, like where they made the ball bouncy and they messed with gravity and they did all these fun things, which is great. Now 2K Sports doesn't have that freedom. They have to make a realistic game that looks like what you see on TV or in person, and is set in reality. And so that's why for me 2K got the nod. It's because their achievements because of that were greater in my eyes. What they had to overcome was greater, and the type of people they have to market the game for and design the game for are it's more varied. They need 6 different modes, all with depth to them. They need online to run well, and 6 different online modes, and they need to tie in a virtual currency in some way that makes them money in a mode or 2 or within the whole game. So overcoming those obstacles, I think, is what made NBA 2K the greater game for me this year. Although, like I said on the podcast, if I was picking a favorite game, that would probably be Rocket League.
The other controversy, and again, it's not like I'm getting bombarded by thousands of no's, but there were definitely more than a handful of people who replied that, okay, Rocket League this year, Super Mega Baseball last year, you guys, meaning all of us, are purposely trying to be contrarian or trying to, at one.
That's the opposite of what we do, I think, for the most part.
And one person said, you guys are trying to stick it to the big time sports game makers. And if that is anybody's mindset, it certainly isn't mine or yours, nor do I think that is anybody else's. I think it's simply that, Super Mega Baseball last year, I believe, came in third, right?
I think it was third. Although Owen and Sam at Polygon, I think they named it their sports game of the year, but in our press row podcast, it was, I think it was third. You're right.
Right. So there was more than a few people who felt that we were, for whatever reason, just purposely trying to single out a non-traditional sports game or exclude from the big time games from the others, and that's just not the case. It turned out that, again, just like last year, just like Rocket League wasn't in my top 3 this year, Super Mega Baseball, fun game, really good game, and we've gotten to know the guys who made the game, but it wasn't in my top 3 last year either. So I think it just goes to show. That's why on the show we have, as I mentioned, people from Metacritic sites. We've got independent folks, right? We got we've got the Operation Sports guys, which is the biggest sports community. We got TJ, who's just a fan, right? We've got all sorts of different folks, and when you get those different perspectives, you're going to have different views. So, there were definitely some people that felt that we were, again, for the second year in a row, purposely bringing an indie or a small title into the mix that may not have deserved. So, your thoughts on that sort of, higher level contrarian, commentary?
There'd be easier ways to do that and attract attention if that was the goal, than awarding a game second or third place in our list. I think what you have to consider is that we play these games every year for extended periods of time. We're still playing Madden NBA 2K months later. You're still playing the show 9 months later. So when you go year to year, for the most part, this hasn't necessarily been the case with NBA 2K, but with other games, incremental improvements, additions. It's not anything drastic. And so what we have are games that we enjoy, but maybe most of them don't blow us away, right? Because we have certain expectations already. We have a baseline. We know where Madden is this year. So where it is next year will just be, a certain amount above it. So when a new game comes in the market, because we don't have creative games anymore, we don't have these arcade type games or anything like that. Instead of just the normal simulation games, we want something different too, and they aren't being developed very often anymore. We loved the bigs back then. You can't tell me we were contrarian for loving the bigs. That was a fantastic game. Or you can go back to the NBA Streets and the NBA Jams and the NFL Blitz and Streets. These games that or Blitz the League even was another game that was well liked a while back that was way off the wall. So what those games have the potential to do, what a Rocket League or a Super Mega Baseball has the potential to do, is surprise us and excite us in a way that is really not possible with those other games for the most part. So they're going to catch our attention, and I think also we do want to support efforts like that. We do want to see them succeed because we want more games like that. Rocket League is a huge hit. They've got like 8 million people playing, which, by the way, is more than NBA 2K or Madden, or the only one that might be higher is FIFA. It's popular, and we want that to be the case for games that we like, because that means those developers will create sequels, or other developers will come up with their own creative. You don't think EA Sports right now is looking at a Rocket League and saying, man, we missed the boat on that for esports? Because that game right there, they could have done something like that, and they didn't. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on beyond just, well, this game's better in this way and this way and this way. Here you have a brand new game that comes in. I mean, the Game Awards, not this year, but last year, had in the sports category had Mario Kart as an option. We're not doing that. We might include racing games in our thinking, but those are probably never going to make the top. It's just a sense of newness and a sense of excitement that comes with some of these different types of games that, when a good one comes along, and because they have to be good or else they're not going to get any attention. I mean, it's not like Super Mega Baseball. Most people like that game. It just didn't really reach a widespread audience. Rocket League, everyone seems to love, and it reached a widespread audience. And that game has more mainstream appeal than any of our sports games do, Rich.
The last question, so to speak, and this came from a couple different people, not exactly, I'm paraphrasing it, but a couple folks said, what will it take or what has to happen for Madden or FIFA to get back into the top spot? If you recall, FIFA was our first sports game of the year back when we first did it. I don't remember which year. Madden has never been the Press Start Podcast Sports Game of the Year. I think we all agree that it's gotten better. Certainly taken significant leaps from the last couple of years on the 360 and PS3. We play it regularly. In your mind, is it more that, an NBA and an MLB have to really fall? Or like what has to happen to get, and we'll take them each one at a time, like Madden, which we think is a good game, and FIFA, which is a good game. What do you think will, and not just you and me, but like the group of people, what has to happen for those two games to sort of leapfrog over an NBA and an MLB?
Well, I think in the case of Madden, a lot of that is gameplay related, and we did see a lot of improvement this year. There's also presentation, which is still one of the weakest aspects of Madden, from commentary to just the game day presentation that you would normally see on television that doesn't look anything like it does in Madden, and within franchise mode where the presentation doesn't really tie you in very much to what's going on in your league. Also, you have there in Madden a career mode that hasn't been touched in like 6 years. There's really nobody wants to play that single player career mode anymore within Connected Franchise. So there's a lot of fundamental stuff for Madden there that they've been improving on, but that they still have a ways to go. And there's still, if you talk about gameplay or presentation, there's very few ways in which Madden is the best. I mean, there are lots of ways where Madden is good or above average, but I don't know if there's anything Madden does better than any other sports game. So they have to excel in some way. And over the years, that's kind of been Madden's problem. It's been a good game generally, but they had to design the game because they have the exclusive NFL license. They had to design the game to appeal to everyone. So they did a little bit here, a little bit there. They tinkered with making gameplay a little more arcadey or accessible, back and forth. And you had those the leads of the development or the suits above changing the quote unquote vision of the game or the core focus of the game every year or every 2 years. So you never really had consistency building up. So Madden needs consistency and it needs to excel in certain ways that it just hasn't yet. FIFA, I think, is in a tougher spot actually because they've been on the top for so long, and they've gotten picked away at, and their focus has gone more towards Ultimate Team, which is great for the people who play Ultimate Team, but other people outside of that feel a little left out, and their gameplay fluctuates. For some reason, it's really good one year, and then the next year it's off. It just feels off, and then they have issues with patches changing the way the game plays, positive and negative. So there's perception issues there as well, and FIFA actually has a competitor, which makes things a little more interesting. But I'm not sure that the others have to fall. I mean, you look at NBA 2K, they didn't need NBA Live did fall, but they didn't need it to fall. If they had done everything they did, NBA Live was irrelevant to their climb. So I mean, they have to be innovative, and a lot of these games are not being innovative in the way that NBA 2K has, which is a great example of you have to invest and you have to focus on the right areas to really succeed in that regard.
I mean, there's no doubt that NBA 2K and MLB The Show are the darlings of the Press Row podcast because, they have swapped Game of the Year for the last couple, 2 or 3 years, right? Like this year was NBA 2K16. Last year was MLB The Show. The year before that, it was NBA 2K14, right? So,
yeah, and the previous 2 years, I did not agree. I did not think NBA 2K14. I did not think MLB 14, the show, should have won either. They had so many various issues, but it's a wide panel, and you get a sampling of different priorities and everything. And I don't know. Like the show is hampered by coming out in March. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely part of it. Now we give it a ton of attention come award season. We're still talking about it regularly. Yep. It's always in the mix, even if it doesn't win. Now, that's not the case at an awards like the Game Awards, a more general awards show, right, where the show's long forgotten. And it's just, again, we had so many sports games bunched together this year that it's hard for something else to break out. People are generally going to go with the games they feel comfortable with and the games they've already enjoyed. So it makes it harder for something else to kind of break out of that. But we'll see as we go forward if that can happen.
So as always, a lot of conversation, a lot of people listening, a lot of people talking to us about the Press Row Podcast Sports Game of the Year episode. If you haven't listened, please go give it a listen. It's a lot of fun, a lot of arguments, a little bit of fisticuffs, some hurt feelings, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, as we talk about these games, is that our top three, 2K16, Rocket League, and the show, were like a league above the pack. I mean, Madden was next. Yes. That was way behind. And then what did we have after that? FIFA had a point or two. I mean, barely acknowledged. And Pro Evolution Soccer didn't get any.
Nope.
Partially because of its botching of roster updates. And
well, you know what? I'll bet you this, Brian, and this is based upon nothing other than, I mean, I think I was probably the biggest fan of that game on the show.
You still didn't vote it in.
I didn't because I played more of Madden and more of MLB The Show and more of NBA 2K16, right? And the reason is because we're in a community of Madden. Like the only place I would have possibly put Pro Evolution would have been at number 3, but then I would have had to bump out Madden, and then I would have purposely sort of been contrarian, right? Because if I'm honest with myself, I play Madden in 2 online leagues. Not, again, because I think Madden is the greatest football game of all time, but because I do enjoy participating in a community. Now, if I had a Pro Evolution community, like if we had an online league where we had, you had Swansea and I had Everton and TJ had Liverpool or whatever club he decides to be a supporter of this week, maybe it would be different, but that's not a community that we're in, and so therefore, if I were to choose Pro Evolution, yes, I recognize it's terrific, but at the end of the day, I wind up playing Madden more and enjoying Madden more because of the community. I got to be honest with myself in this as well.
Yeah, and the online league idea that you mentioned is one way in which FIFA or Pro Evolution could make a jump. I bet you if we had a decent online league in either one of those, that it would become a top 3 game for us in the future. So there's different ways. Again, it's about innovation. It's about doing more. I think going above and beyond just what is expected or the bare minimum for a yearly update. And there's only a handful of games that do that every year. We only have 7 or 8 really legitimate sports games now as it is. So when you trim it down to 3 or 4, you're left with some really strong options.